Okay, folks, it's May. I wish I could say time has been going quickly, but with all of us kind of trapped up in the house, I think it's probably going a little slower than any of us would like. Um, Today we're going to review proportions, but we're going to review them based on some things that y'all saw in your geometry class, which was how to find the length of an arc of a circle when all you know is the degrees of the arc and the radius of the circle. Remember, a total circle has 360 degrees. So we're looking for a ratio in this case of 300 degrees over 360, and that's the proportion of the circle that's noted by this, and that's got to be equal to the arc length, which we're going to call x, divided by the circumference, which is this right here. Now we have a circumference formula, and that's equal to 2 times the radius times pi. And for pi on all of these, we're going to use pi is equal to 3.14. So the total circle, or total circumference, is going to be, in this case, 2 times a radius of 6 times 3.14, which is equal to, get my rusty trusty phone out here, because I did not see, got an actual calculator here. And if we take 2 times 6 times 6 times 3.14, we get 37.68. Okay. Remember, our ratio up here is x over the circumference. Well, we now know what the circumference is. So all we have to do is find x. Well, if we set up our little proportion here of 300, which was the degrees of the arc, divided by 360, which is the total degrees in the circle, that's got to equal to x, which is the length of this arc, divided by the circumference, which we just calculated to be 37.68. Now, how do we solve this proportion? Remember, we use the butterfly method. We cross multiply. So when we cross multiply 360 times x, we get 360x is equal to, pardon me guys, 37.68 times 300, going to give a big number, 11,304. And to get our x by itself, we divide by 360. That makes 1, and we're left with x is equal to, got to do the same thing on both sides. So if we divide our 11,304 by 360, we get 31.4, and in this case it's 31.4 feet. Okay? 31.4 feet. Okay? So of the total circumference of almost 38 feet, 31.4 is included in this. So let's take a look at number 2, because we're going to do exactly the same thing. We know that the circumference is going to be equal to 2 times the radius, which in this case is 10 miles. Let's put a 10 in there, times 3.14, which is what we're using for pi. And that is equal to, let's see what that's equal to. That's equal to 20 times 3.14. The circumference here is 62.8. Okay? 62.8. So we know that the length of our arc is x, and the measure of our arc is 135. So we just set up our little ratio here, 135 degrees divided by 360, which is the total number of degrees in the in the circle, has got to be equal to x, which is this portion of the circumference, divided by 62.8, which is the total circumference. So once again, we're just going to do our cross multiplication. 360 times x is 360x, and 135 times 62.8, 135 times 62.8 is equal to 8,478. And again, we divide by 360. That goes away. We divide this one by 360. And we're left with x is equal to 8478 divided by 360 is equal to 23.6. So, of our total circumference of 62.8, this is about a third of it, or a little more than a third. So let's move on. And like I said, they're all the same, guys. Here we've got to calculate the circumference. Circumference is going to be equal to 2 times 13 times 3.14. So your circumference is equal to 2 times 13 times 3.14 is equal to 81.64. Whoops, 81.64. Again, 2 times the radius times 3.414 gives us 81, and that's an 8, guys. So now we set up our proportion. The measure of our arc is 60 degrees, so we put in 60 over 360 has got to be equal to x over the total circumference of 81.64. Let's just cross multiply, and we get 360x is equal to let's see, 81.64 times 60 is equal to 4,898.4. We divide by 360. Those go away and we're left with x. Keep it balanced, we have to divide by 360 on this side. And that gives us 13.6. X is equal to 13.6, and in this case it's centimeters. Up here it was miles. But you see, they're all working the same way. We're looking for the proportion of the total circumference that is included in the 270. So let's just finish up with number 4, because I'm going to be asking you guys to do 5 through 8, which are on the next page. But I'm going to include this page in the assignment so that you've got something to go by. So in this case, we know the circumference is equal to 2 times 11 times 3.14. So the circumference is equal to, let's figure out what we got here. The circumference is 69.08, if my math is correct, which, as you guys know, I make mistakes too. All right? So we set up our ratio. We're looking for a ratio of 270 degrees over 360 degrees. This is the measurement of the arc, the central angle, and that's got to be equal to find out what x is, which is the dark part of the circle, we have to have x over the total circumference, which is 69.08. So we do our multiplication here. 360 times x gives us 360x, and 69.08 times 270 gives us a big number of 18,651.6, and that's the 270 times the 69.08. We divide by 360. Got to keep both sides the same. Well, that 360 goes away and becomes a 1, so we're left with x is equal to 18,451.6 divided by 360 gives us 51.8, and in this case it is yards. Okay. All right, let's make sure we're all in agreement here. Step 1. Step 1, find the circumference. And that is circumference is equal to 2 times the radius times 3.14, which is what we're using for pi. Then we set up a ratio of the central angle over 360, this one will always be 360, of x over the circumference. That's part 2. Okay? Those are the 2 steps. Now, this is the one I'm going to grade. If you look, well, I guess I didn't put the right second page here. But if you look, page 2, it looks the same way. Follow the same instructions. Find the length of each arc. Okay? And round it to the nearest tenth. Okay, guys, I'm going to leave you with this one, and I'll be back in a couple of minutes, and we'll talk about another thing to take a look.